Tonight on Q2, a shocking crime comes to light.
When a situation like this happens, you have to really look at the culture.
A group home worker accused of beating a disabled resident to death in Billings. Plus, in the right place at the right time.
Anybody with my type of training, that's just second nature to them.
A medical professional jumps into action after a man collapses right in front of him. It's all thanks to an AED, a machine that helps save thousands of lives each year. The MTN 10 o'clock news starts right now.
From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. A 19-year-old Billings group home worker is charged with deliberate homicide after police say he beat a 37-year-old disabled resident to death back in February. It's a situation that first began as an aggravated assault incident on February 5th at a home run by Residential Support Services. But now it's turned to homicide after the man died from his injuries. Tonight, our David J. talks with the property's owner and has more on the concerning details regarding this case.
This crime happened about a month ago. One of the workers told police that the suspect was kicking the victim, who was taken to the hospital and later died about 2 weeks later. The charges were updated and amended from aggravated assault to deliberate homicide.
Workers at the group home told police the 37-year-old man, identified as A in court documents, was not breathing normally, his skin was discolored, and he was lethargic.
You react with disbelief. It's a horrible situation.
Cal Kelton owns Residential Support Services and runs 13 group homes for people with developmental disabilities. He says the victim had been at his home for close to 20 years.
It's been very emotional. As I said earlier, we are, in many instances, families or even more than families to a lot of the people we serve.
According to the county attorney's office, A had intellectual disabilities and the cognitive function of a 2 or 3-year-old. A was also nonverbal and only weighed approximately 108 pounds. An ambulance took the man, identified as A, who had life-threatening injuries, to Billings Clinic, where an MRI showed multiple broken ribs, a lacerated liver, a lacerated spleen, and a brain bleed. A witness told police that 19-year-old Dante Anthony Garriott, who worked at the home, stomped on A's body 3 times and he was face down on the floor of his room. Court documents also state the defendant later confessed that he was trying to walk A to his room, but A kept falling to the ground. This frustrated the defendant, so he started to kick A on the side of his body. A was able to get into his room, where the defendant stated that he then punched A in the body and once in the face with a closed fist.
There is no magic wand. You have a sixth sense. If you're getting a vibe from somebody, there's probably a reason for that. This particular individual, nobody saw it coming.
Kelton says he did a thorough background check on Garriott, which included a criminal and social security history, as well as looking at the registered sexual offender list.
We vet people every way from Sunday that we can. Let's hope that as a people and as a culture and as a society, we start to value people again, because I think that's where it all kind of went off track.
In Billings, David J., MTN News.
A Lodge Grass woman was sentenced to 24 years in prison today for a large-scale, multi-state meth trafficking operation that she ran from her home on the Crow Indian Reservation. 52-year-old Frederica Lefthand, the former dean of academics at Little Bighorn College, pled guilty in August of last year to possession with intent to distribute meth and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Lefthand supplied a significant portion of the meth sold across the Crow, Northern Cheyenne, Fort Belknap, and Rocky Boy Indian reservations, and had operations in every reservation town as well as in Billings and Havre. According to the government, she was the ringleader of the operation, which involved pounds and pounds of meth. The investigation into the ring led to federal charges against 25 other defendants. President Biden delivering his third State of the Union address tonight. It represents a fresh start with voters as he addressed one of his biggest audiences of the year, while his GOP opponent, former President Donald Trump, promised a live play-by-play. Natalie Brand recaps the night from Washington, D.C.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
Before Congress and the American public, President Biden delivered his final State of the Union address ahead of November's presidential election.
What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas.
While the State of the Union is an official speech, the president touched on key election year issues, including abortion.
If you, the American people, send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you, I'll restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again.
As Republican lawmakers in Congress accused the administration of failing on the border, the president called for a bipartisan solution.
Get this bill done. We need to act now.
The president also unveiled plans for a temporary aid port on Gaza's coast to ease the growing humanitarian crisis as ceasefire talks in the war between Israel and Hamas stall.
No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance.
Outside, pro-Palestinian demonstrators gathered near the Capitol. Families of Israeli Americans held hostage in Gaza were among those invited as special guests by lawmakers, as well as Ukrainian Americans, as foreign aid continues to be held up in the U.S. House. Freshman Senator Katie Britt of Alabama delivered the Republican response.
He's out of touch. Under his administration, families are worse off, our communities are less safe, and our country is less secure.
President Biden didn't mention his political rival, former President Donald Trump's name once during his 68-minute speech, but he referred to him as his predecessor 13 times as he criticized him. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Well-known Billings Gazette photojournalist Larry Mayer attended tonight's State of the Union, but not to report on it. He was a guest of Congressman Matt Rosendale. Each representative is allowed to bring one guest, and Mayer says he was chosen because of the photos of that Chinese spy balloon that he snapped as it made its way over Billings.
Covering the story of the airport being closed and why it was being closed. And when nobody could tell me why it was being closed, that's when I started to push and to send out all the pictures that I had of the balloon to military people and people in the military and in state government in Montana, and eventually that led to the Pentagon telling me that they were preparing a response, which they didn't actually do until the next day.
Republicans, including Rosendale, have criticized the Biden administration's response to that balloon incident. Montana welcomed roughly 5,000 new businesses in February. According to the Secretary of State, Christy Jacobson, that is 200 more businesses than this time last year. The Secretary of State's office is providing a one-time fee waiver for all Montana businesses filing their annual report, but you must file before April 15th. 2023, 59,000 new businesses were registered in Montana. Cardiac events are the #1 killer of Montanans. That's why prevention, training, and technology are so important when someone goes down. It's a situation that one off-duty medical professional knows all too well. Just yesterday, he was forced to jump into action after a man collapsed in the locker room at the YMCA. Our Casey Conlon has details on how just 3 seconds can make a world of difference.
It's a call you never want to hear.
Mid-workout, heard the overcom announce a medical emergency and ran up to the men's locker room and found a gentleman unresponsive and down on the ground.
Billings anesthesiologist Gary Atterbury has jumped into CPR action many times in his career, but Wednesday's event was the first outside of the hospital.
Once we found that he was unresponsive without a pulse, I called for an AED.
So this is our AED, it's a Philips.
An AED shocks the heart back into rhythm and is very user-friendly with audible directions.
Stay calm. Check responsiveness.
Atterbury had help from another physician nearby, as well as YMCA staff, including aquatics director Kathy DeVries.
We did 3 complete cycles before the paramedics got here.
The team was able to restart a pulse by the time the man left the building, proof of this technology's importance.
Your survival rate increases so much more the sooner you get the AED on.
Especially if it's under 3 minutes.
Chances of survival are said to increase from 17% to 80% if an AED is administered when needed in that 3-minute range.
That's why here at our facility and at other facilities, we have them timed out so that there's an AED available within a 3-minute run.
Lori Martinez is part of a Billings Clinic team getting as many AEDs into the community as possible. Enter Pulse Point, an app that shows where AEDs are located near you. So we went for a drive.
There's a couple AEDs around us here, so we'll just go see if we can find one of them.
First stop, the Alberta Bear Theater.
We can kind of zoom in on this picture and see that our AED is right by the coat check station.
Sure enough, we found the coat check station and found the working AED. That's also a focus for Martinez's team. Not just AED availability, but upkeep. They found many that are expired or not working. It's why they're transitioning to newer models.
We can actually open up the system and see all the AEDs that we have, and we can see when their pads and batteries are expired.
Unit okay.
We found another a few blocks away inside St. Pat's Cathedral, now with a picture for easy identification. It's peace of mind for all who have ever seen them in use firsthand.
Makes me calmer when I know that I have the tools that I need to succeed in saving someone's life.
In Billings, Casey Conlon, MTN News.
Those life-saving measures now being taught to high schoolers. Up next, I'll show you how local students got firsthand training in CPR as they look to be prepared for an emergency. And in sports, chasing championships. State tournaments tip off across the state, including several local teams shooting for hardware. We'll have all the highlights coming up in just a bit.